Today we're going to be painting a sky like Georgia O'Keeffe. I'm going to look at the layers of the atmosphere. Those are on the board. The first layer is called the troposphere, and it's almost reddish orange. So I'm going to paint some red and pink and maybe even a little bit of orange along the bottom to fill the bottom part of my paper. I'm using these back and forth, fairly wispy lines because they sort of mimic the lines that we see in the sky. Every time I change colors, I must rinse my brush. There's a little band between the stratosphere and the troposphere that looks almost purple, so I'm going to capture that right here. Then I'm going to paint the stratosphere. It's a lighter blue, so I'm choosing a light blue from my palette. When I'm finished with that color, I need to rinse my brush and wipe back and forth on the sponge. Now the last layer, the mesosphere, is a darker blue. So I'm simply going to repeat that back and forth to fill the top of my paper. When this is dry, we'll add different varieties of clouds, but if I did that today, it would really muddy up my colors, and I don't want to do that. I want to have really pretty bands of colors to show the layers in the atmosphere. We're going to be gluing a cow skull to the top of this. It'll look really cool, and we're going to use symmetry to create our skull. I'm going to start by folding my paper in half. I have a stencil for you to help you capture the shape of the skull. I'm lining up the straight part of that stencil with the fold on the paper. I'm simply tracing around with my pencil. In just a minute, I'm going to cut this out. And because of symmetry, I'm going to wind up with a whole skull, not a half skull like you're seeing here. When I cut, I have to keep the papers together. I don't unfold to cut. So I'm going around carefully. I'm turning my paper as I'm working to follow the curves of that line that I made in pencil. There I have a little indent around the forehead. If you want horns, we will add them later, so don't worry about them today. Now I'm going to open up my paper, and you can see I have the shape of a full skull. Now I want to look at the lines that I see on the skull. Your worksheet has two sides. One of them has really clear lines, so if I were you, I'd start with that. There is a line down the center of the skull's head. Some of it is a little dotted. Then there's almost like an upside down U right towards the center. From there, we can see that those little bumps out, I guess I'd call them on the skull, are where the eyes will go. You may use your pencil to shade in the eyes. In fact, we're going to be playing around with shading a little bit in this drawing. Now, since that skull is symmetrical, I'm going to make that same line that leads to the eye on the other side, and I'm going to try my best to make it symmetrical. But it's challenging, especially when I'm using these organic shapes, to make it exactly the same. So just try your best, and I bet you anything, it'll look great. The good thing about nature is it's not totally perfect. So any little errors will actually make your paper look more natural. Now I'm going around the nose. I'm filling in where the nostrils would be. Then I'm going to go back to the skull. If I look at that drawing, there's a little wavy line above the eye. There we go. Now I'm going to flip over my paper. This side has a lot more value. And I'm going to shade in the different areas on the skull that I notice are gray in this image. This will just make it look like it has some shadows or value happening in addition to the line that I made just a moment ago. Good. Now my skull is starting to take shape. I'm going to go back to my painting now. I'm going to paint some clouds. There are different types of clouds, and you can make different types of clouds in your painting. One type is this wispy cloud. I'm taking my brush and I'm just loading it and making really wispy lines in a shape. So I'm kind of capturing that shape of the cloud. Now, a fluffy cloud. I'm using that dabbing motion as opposed to that streaking that I did just a moment ago. You can choose to make one type of cloud on your painting, or you can choose to combine the types of clouds. Pay attention to where you put them on your paper though, and make it look united. So you don't want to do maybe just one type of cloud. You might want to do one fluffy, one streaky. Maybe you'll do two streaky, two fluffy. See what looks good on your paper. There, another streaky one over there. And I think I'm ready now to put my work together. So I'm going to go back to my skull, and I'm going to put glue along the edges of the back. So I'm tracing around my skull. It doesn't work to put a glob in the middle. You really need to trace around the outside edges of your skull. Then I'm going to flip it over and glue it to the sky that I painted. I want to press the skull to make sure that it's really down there well. Now if I want to go back and make horns, now is my chance. I'm going to get a piece of white paper and I'm going to line it up where the horns would go so I can see the size. I have 2 pieces of paper, so that way when I cut, it will double up. And I'm simply drawing the shape of the horn I want. It looks almost like half a banana. Now I'm going to cut that out, and when I'm cutting through 2 pieces of paper, not 1. The horns can aim up or down. You can play around with which way you think looks best, but you want them both to be the same. So you don't want one up, one down. You want either both down or both up. So you can see here up versus down. I think I want mine down. The last thing you can do is add flowers. I have tissue paper for you in all different colors. To make a flower, you can either use 1 or 2 pieces of tissue paper. You just, from the center, bunch up, and it looks almost like a really pretty organic flower. If you want to do 2 pieces of tissue paper, you take your first one and you put a dot of glue in the center. Then you pick up 1 additional piece and just follow that same procedure where you're bunching from the center. Then you put a little dab of glue on the back of that and stick it wherever you'd like it to go. I think I'm going to put one in my skull's forehead here to make it look almost like a crown. Repeating, then I'm just taking a piece of tissue paper, dab of glue, 1 more tissue paper, pinch the middle, dab on the back, and put it where I'd like it. Then I can add some in the background if I like. Dab, layer, pinch in the center, and stick it where you'd like it to go. Since I'd like this to be symmetrical, I'm going to make one on the other side. Again, piece of tissue paper, glue, layer, pinch, then stick. Then your artwork will be done. It'll be really beautiful. You'll have a variety of colors. You've used symmetry, line, value, all types of things to make your beautiful skull.